Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you enjoy lunch and I hope that you stay awake. And now, welcome to our session on the strengthening creative economy and the COVID-19 recovery. And we are very privileged to have you, as well as we are very privileged our speakers who have very rich experience working on the sector, even though it is the relatively evolving sector, emerging sector. So now my name is Tanda, and I will be just here to introduce you about our speakers. Then I will pass it to our moderator who is with us today. So first, our first speaker will be Ms. Kathleen Buga. She is the economist from the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. So she have been working on, of course, creative economy project, and she also her background also came from working on a lot of innovation projects, and also like data, so which are very important for the creative economy development. And yeah, today she will present us about the strengthening creative economy and the COVID-19 recovery. So you will see a lot of data and figures like how much it is contributing our economy, global economy and GMS economy, linking that. I have the one who is with us today, Mr. Benjamin Milden Hamping. He is the project director of Connect ASEAN and from the ASEAN Foundation. So he is also the one who conceptualized the project, who developed the project, and who has been working through the region, and of course GMS and ASEAN. So today he's gonna talk about the ASEAN Korea approach for ARC sector development. So you will learn a lot of both on ground and also the cooperation framework, he has been working. Then we will have the Miss Montini Yongwiku. She is the director of the Creative City Development, Creative Economy Agency. So in Thailand, you may also know we have a lot of now, it's like Creative District. We are promoting food, culture, and talents. So she will talk about the strategies Thailand has been practicing, applying, so which would be also the good lesson learned for us. So her topic will be Creative District, Renew Economies and Social Driving Force after COVID-19. And then lastly, we will have our moderator, who is the Executive Director of Mekong Institute, Mr. Surya Pichalakan. So this is just for the introduction. And yes, Edie, please.
Thank you, Tanta, and good afternoon, participants who are attending on site, and also speakers and participants who attend online. Pleasant afternoon. Just to recap some of the discussion we have had in the morning and trying to connect to this session, I would like to spend a few minutes just to highlight what we have been up to so far. So this morning we discussed that GMS countries have been promoting regional cooperation using economic driver in order to share resources, opportunity, so as to advance the development in the region. And GMS is also a connecting piece that connects Southeast Asia and the rest of Asia. However, due to COVID pandemic, we have that there's been impacts to food security, to livelihoods, to investment. And therefore, we would like to look into ways how we can help to accelerate the recovery, COVID recovery. The policy has been set, action plan has been developed, but we find that there's still a gap where policy will be put into implementation. One of the major topic or area that we would like to discuss, which is inclusive and resilient society. because we know that any regional cooperation integration that do not really engage community stakeholder and not really build resilience will not yield the most benefit. So this morning, we have really touched upon one of the subtopic under the public health emergency and One Health. So wellness sector has been covered. The topic that will be the topic of this afternoon is about the importance and possible contribution of creative economy. This is also in light of allowing people, rural communities to access to employment, better livelihoods through creative economy. Of course, when we refer to creative economy, there is no internationally defined concept. For the purpose of discussion, I'd like just to cite the UNCTAD so-called working definition. They refer creative economy to an evolving concept that built on the interplay between human creativity, ideas, and intellectual property that will create an opportunity for employment through economic activities. Essentially, it is the knowledge-based economic activities upon which the creative industry are based. That is a broad concept, and we will not be able to really understand it clearly. Therefore, we are fortunate enough today to understand and see potential contribution of creative economy from the lenses and experience of the speaker, which they were used by Tanta a while. Before inviting the first speaker, I would like just to share with the audience some of the open questions that we hope to be able to address, or perhaps trying to understand, so that we can really identify activities or agenda for actions that we can take up and promote in order to advance the promotion of creative economy in the coming 12 to 24 months. Yeah. The first question that we always have in mind is that how we can really look into creative economy, not only in terms of creativity alone, but making sure that creativity in various forms could be transformed into a proper industry and economy. This way we will gain benefit in terms of allowing people, community to gain employment and livelihoods opportunity. Second point is that creative economy has been promoted by various countries in the GMS, but we find that little has tapped at or leveraged on regional economic cooperation and integration. GMS economic cooperation, Mekong +1, ACMEC, and so on and so forth. How creative economy could be a topic where it could offer an opportunity for this country to utilize regional cooperation framework to help promote and really reach out this creative economy to the communities in the GMS. Last but not the least, if creative economy would provide means of better livelihoods and also employment, how we can really look into area in which we could promote creative economy to help accelerate COVID recovery, including building long-term resilience. This will be a topic where it will coming out. It might be raised in a session, or it might be touched upon by the speaker. Having said that, I would like just to invite the first speaker to share her insight and also thought and ideas that we can pick up later during the discussion. She is Miss Kathleen Bogo, Economic Affairs Officer of Trade and Creative Economy Division of UNCTAD. She's already participating online. Please give a round of applause to Miss Kathleen. If you are ready, please, can you take the floor now, Kathleen? Okay, good.
Yes.
So the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Yes, okay, excellent. And I would like to also ask the organizer if they could show the presentation, please.
Yeah. Wait.
It is already on screen, whether you can see from your own screen.
I can't see it yet. No.
Okay, give us a minute.
No problem at all. I will start in any case, and then I will just tell you when to move the slides. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Katalin Bokor, and I work on the Trade and Creative Economy program of UNCTAD in Geneva. We support developing countries in enhancing knowledge and understanding of the creative economy and its contribution to sustainable development and international trade. We also assist countries in consensus building and increasing capacity in policies targeting creative industries. At the moment, for example, we are working with Angola on a creative economy mapping project because we firmly believe that for policymakers to be able to develop policies targeting the creative economy, the first step is actually to measure it, to define it and to measure it and to be able to assess its macroeconomic importance. We also collect and analyze data on international trade in creative goods and services. And we have recently launched our Creative Economy Outlook 2022. As it was mentioned by the chair, the world faces a major cost of living crisis built upon a fragile and uneven recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, which only got worsened by conflicts. And we are also facing environmental challenges and increasing digital divides. So although creative industries are crucial sectors for achieving the 2030 agenda, the COVID-19 pandemic indeed severely impacted some creative industries and highlighted their vulnerabilities. Nevertheless, cultural and creative industries significantly contribute to the world economy. It is estimated that they contribute up to 3% of global GDP. And we estimate that in 2020, creatives represented 3% of global merchandise exports, and creative services made up 21% of total global services exports. Are the slides ready? I still can't see them.
Kathleen, do you see the slide? Actually, we already shared the screen now.
Okay, because I can't see them, but I see on Zoom is your browser.
Really? So we
Yes.
will close and reshare again. No, stop share now. Let me.
Shanta, it might be this machine that is sharing.
Let me share. Yeah. Trade economy and let me.
Perfect. Very good. I'm just
okay. Thank you.
Very good. Next slide, please. I'm just coming to the definitions. So as it was mentioned, there are several definitions at the moment for the creative economy and creative industries. Different countries and also different international organizations give different definition, and they have different statistical coverage. We at UNCTAD define creative industries as cycles of creating, producing, and distributing goods and services that use creativity and intellectual capital as primary inputs. They comprise a set of knowledge-based activities that produce tangible goods and intangible intellectual or artistic services with creative content, economic value, and market objectives. I think this highlights really that at UNCTAD we also have a kind of a wider approach to measure international trade in creative goods and services. While, for example, if you're familiar with UNESCO's work on the area, UNESCO is mainly focusing on cultural industries and cultural goods and services. The IDB in Latin America, they use very often this concept of the orange economy. And also, in case you're familiar with WIPO, WIPO is really focusing on copyright industries. So that's just to highlight how definitions are important, but they are still a little bit fluid and they are varying by countries. Next slide, please. This is just to highlight that a lot of countries are already measuring the contribution of their creative economy to GDP. They measure the employment in these sectors. They also measure trade. Some of the countries, when they account for the employment, they also disaggregate data for women and men, which is very important because then we really realize that actually women and young people contribute a lot to the creative economy, and the creative economy is very important also for the future because this is an inclusive sector and a very important employer in most of the countries. Next slide, please. So in our recent Creative Economy Outlook, we ran a survey with 33 countries just to capture how different countries manage by public policy the creative economy. What we found is that almost all countries have at least one entity, a ministry or an agency in charge of the creative economy. Most countries even split the duties for the creative industries between different agencies. It can be Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Economy, Education, Investment Promotion, so really varying agencies. What we also observed is that in the past 5 to 7 years, there are more and more national strategies and policies and regulations that are focusing on the sector. What we also observed is that during the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of countries specifically included the creative economy in their recovery plans, and they had different policy tools and the different measures to help the creative sector during the pandemic. If you could come back to the slide, the next one, please. Next one, yeah, this one. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight that Cambodia and Myanmar participated in this, and we'll probably have another survey next year. So we would welcome all the Mekong Institute countries to participate. And now coming to trade. So because of our mandate, UNCTAD is collecting data in international trade, in creative services and creative goods, because international trade in creative goods and services is providing more and more revenues for countries. The most recent data shows us that actually trade in creative services is even more important than trade in creative goods. Next slide, please. Yeah, and just to give you a global picture, so in terms of trade in creative goods, what we can observe is that developing economies are exporting more trade in creative goods. And this is, of course, dominated by China, who is by far the largest exporter of creative goods. But in the top 10 exporters, we can also see Vietnam, for example, or Korea and India from Asia. Next slide, please. Yes, here I really just wanted to show the countries in the region. What we can observe is that excluding China, which is of course the world's largest exporter of creative goods, Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia are the largest creative goods exporters. And I also made a figure just to show you how much creative goods represent in the country's total export. So what we can see in the recent years in Cambodia, the export of creative goods have become something really important. It represents up to 7% of all exports. It is followed by China and also by Vietnam. These figures are important for policymakers because they can identify, the creative industries that are providing the most export revenues. And once these sectors are identified, then policymakers can potentially assist these sectors with the targeted training or export promotion. So that is the usefulness of these kind of figures. Next slide, please. This is also just to show you that globally, the exports of creative goods is dominated by design products, followed by new media products. Next slide, please. And here I just wanted to show what is the situation in the region. So it's very similar to the global trends that we see. The main exported products in every country in the region are design products. Of course, different products like fashion, interior. For China, toys is also a very important product group. Also jewelry. And in terms of what is imported, we can see that often yarn is a very important imported product, which is basically supporting later on the fashion industry. Next slide, please. And now I would like to mention a little bit the importance of creative services, which is actually in terms of size, it's almost the double of creative goods in terms of its value. If you remember, in trade of creative goods, it's mainly developing countries that are exporting the most. Well, this is the reverse in trading creative services. It's mainly developed economies that are trading among themselves in creative services. And as you can see, the top 10 exporters of creative services is also dominated by developed countries, except for China, which is the 4th largest exporter. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, for the region, there is a very important data gap because although all of the countries have data on international trading services, like the total services, but the data is not disaggregated enough to be able to identify the creative services. So the only 2 countries that have data about creative services is China and Myanmar. As you can see, China is exporting almost $60 billion US dollar worth of creative services, while Myanmar in 2020, the latest year when data was available, stood at 23 million. Next slide, please. Just also to give you an idea what I mean by creative services. So at UNCTAD, the data enables us to differentiate 6 services categories creative. And this dominating creative trade is software services by research and development services. These 2 services categories make up to 60–70% of all international trade in services. Next slide, please. What we find in our latest study in the creative economy out of 2022 is that developing countries face several barriers to participate in creative services trade. First of all, they often lack the fundamental skills and infrastructure to become competitive players in creative services. And here what I mean is access, of course, access to the internet, and also the basic skills, not just literacy, but also entrepreneurial skills, digital skills, very, very important. And the problem is also that often developing countries face services trade restrictions, and they don't have market access to many of the developed country markets. Next slide, please. In the report, we also discuss chapter the different measurement issues. As I mentioned, one of the problems is the lack of international definition for the creative economy. But what we can also see is a lack of data and problem with data. There is an important data gap between developed and developing countries. And of course, we need better data about the creative economy to be able to really capture its full weight, and also to be able to develop policies that are targeting different sectors. So we need better and more disaggregated data to have more insights into the role of services in economic transformation. and their potential for developing economies for services-led diversification. What we can observe is that the main challenges for developing countries are lack of data, lack of appropriate statistical infrastructure, inadequate institutional arrangement between the statistical office, the Ministry of Trade or Ministry of Culture, and also lack of financial resources and IT infrastructure. Next slide, please. A very important trend in the creative economy is digitalization. What we can observe is that the Industry 4.0 technologies, which include 3D printing, Internet of Things, big data, etc. So they open new opportunities for the creative economy. And the COVID-19 pandemic only accelerated this shift towards e-commerce and digital platforms. This contributes to the scope of transformation of the creative economy. But we have to be aware that there are still very important digital divides between developed and developed, and also within countries, between men and women, and different generations. So these digital divides really have to be addressed to really create an inclusive creative economy and society. What we also find is that producers of creative products, especially micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, they face several hurdles in accessing global markets, because for them to access global markets, they need to have some digital skills, entrepreneurial skills, they need to have access to different e-commerce platforms. What we also find is that the intellectual property rights in the digital environment are often unclear. So countries really need to step up efforts to address these challenges and provide enterprises with an up-to-date framework for intellectual property rights. And the main policy areas that we are looking into and where countries should also focus on are the human capacities, the infrastructure, and an enabling environment. Next slide, please. So finally, I just would like to highlight a few recommendations that we make in the report. These recommendations can help countries to really use the creative economy as an active part of the COVID-19 recovery plans. What we think is the way how the creative economy can contribute to recovery is really by elevating it to a macroeconomic level, to really acknowledge its contribution to GDP, but also employment and well-being. So the first step is really to map and measure the creative economy and industries in the national economies. Next slide, please. Another one is, as I mentioned, that we need more and better data to measure the creative industries' economic contributions. And for this, we need better statistical capacities, and we also need more resources to be able to collect more and better data. Next slide, please. And yes, thank you. And so my final point is really about services. So as we know, services, both creative and non-creative services, are really important enablers for economic diversification, especially in developing countries. What we can observe is that creative services represent an increasing share of global services exports, and they generate substantial revenues. They have a potential of generate more significant income, productivity, employment, investment, and trade. What we can also see is that with technological innovation, there is an accelerating shift from producing creative goods to delivering creative services. This is what we can observe typically in the music and film industry, where in the recent years, lots of the transactions really moved to digital platforms. And Finally, developing countries are vastly underrepresented in exports of creative services. So this is obviously something that we should try to address. So what can policymakers do? The first step is to really create and modernize the legal framework related to the creative economy. This includes also tackling intellectual property right challenges. Countries also need to strengthen the institutional capacities of the different agencies that are in charge of the creative economy. Then micro, small and medium-sized enterprises have to participate more in digitally deliverable services, and for this they need capacity building and they need the appropriate infrastructure. And the international community has to improve developing countries' service providers the access to creative services markets. Next slide, please. And yes, I came to the end of my presentation. I hope this was useful for all the participants. Let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to the other presentations and discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katalin. So big hand for. Thank you very much. You have kindly helped to create a broader picture of trying to nationally defined definition, but at least you outline what possibly could be considered as creative economy, be it creative goods, creative services, including some of the current development trend across the globe and also in Southeast Asia and including China. You have shared some of issues and concerns, including possible recommendation that we could take up in order to help advancing better understanding of the importance of creative economy, and at the same time some of the activities that we can lay down foundation for a more longer term agenda for creative economy promotion in the Greater Mekong sub-region. One or two burning questions. The discussion will be made towards the end where all presenters questions. There are immediate important clarification you would like to seek to Ms. Talin. So the floor is open. From the on-site participant, you have any issues you may wish to raise now? If not, you can still keep. So that we can understand the potential contribution and also help us to see what I do. Having said that, I would like just to proceed to the next speaker, as already been introduced by Tanta. So Benjamin Milton Hump, he's the project director of Connect ASEAN. So we'll be hearing also an experience from this project, which is funded by Republic of Korea, but at the same time, also bring with him a personal interest and also experience from the creative art and so on and so forth. He has been curator of the ASEAN Gallery in Jakarta. So I really do hope that he can bring additional insight and also ideas where we can also connect with the previous speaker, Ms. Katalin. So Ben is now setting up his workstation. So I hope we will soon have him ready. Ben, if you're ready, please, the floor is over to you.
Thank you, Suryan. Thank you so much. And Sawadee krap. Thank you all for... Sawadee krap. Can everyone hear me? Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity to present some macro level thinking from the ASEAN Korea perspective on the creative economy, and a very special thank you to the Mekong Institute for inviting me here today. And thank you all for attending. So now let me get straight to it. I represent an arts program, Connect ASEAN. It's funded by the ASEAN Korea Cooperation Fund, and it's facilitated by the ASEAN Foundation. It's the only ASEAN entity enshrined in the ASEAN Charter, and we're located in the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta. Primarily, we focus on ASEAN youth as beneficiaries, and we have 4 project pillars, namely community building, education and scholarships, media and journalism, and the focus of today's presentation will be arts and culture, which is my expertise. Our core arts program is, it was actually launched in January 2020. So as we all know, that was just, in tandem with the global. So I can speak from direct experience about how we got through that. While I'm talking about this, I'm going to split up this presentation in 2. I'm a practitioner, so I'm on the ground. I roll out projects. I'm a consultant, but I'm also engaged by the ASEAN Foundation directly to advise them on their cultural programs. However, I've done a lot of work with the ASEAN Secretariat. We've done a lot of programming with the Culture and Information Division, and really the Culture and Information Division, which is under the socio-cultural pillar of the ASEAN Secretariat. They are responsible for all of the discussion and regional kind of integration across the ASEAN member states for the creative economy. So on that particular more higher level conversation, I will be sharing a lot of information from my colleagues in that department. Anyway, I'll go back to my project, Connect ASEAN. So as I said, when I originally planned Connect ASEAN, it was back in 2017. And back then we designed it as a touring art exhibition showcasing Southeast Asian and Korea arts throughout the region. So something fairly standard. However, during the pandemic, we really had to go back to the drawing board because no one could travel. So we did a lot of hybrid digital and physical kind of experiences to ensure artists and art workers were able to receive the money that we had gotten from the Korean government. Of course, the impetus from this came from the alarming reality that the art sector was at risk of experiencing a lost generation as young people were forced to turn away from the prospect of a career in arts. This severe negative impact, and I can't believe we're talking about COVID still sometimes, but we are still reeling from the impacts, I guess. But of course, there was such severe impact on especially the arts community. The reality is that many of them are self-employed freelancers without any safety nets. There's a social stigma in some countries that being an artist is non-essential or an extra service. And the fact that for many of them, they had to offer their services for free or at a greatly reduced rate onto the digital platforms, which is the only way that anyone could communicate or show their work during this time. So just this slide here shows the cities that have actually hosted Connect ASEAN programs by the end of the funding cycle, which will be next year. And what's interesting is, as I said, we originally only focused on the commercial arts centers of Singapore, Jakarta, and Manila. But because of the pandemic, our program actually, its scope became much wider, and we covered many more ASEAN cities. Many of them are in the greater Mekong sub-region, as you'll notice. And yeah, I think that this is a positive development from what we learned from adapting through COVID. And I think as we go into our next edition, we will ensure that we're trying to collaborate with more communities throughout ASEAN member states. So just getting back to the pandemic and how it has affected the arts sector, ASEAN, or the ASEAN Secretariat, has striven to include arts as a component of the creative economy in its key post-COVID-19 policy coordination effort, the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. And I actually have seen this pop up in a few presentations in today. So This is really the, where ASEAN really can, pull its weight in terms of regional integration for the creative economy and making sure it's on the agenda for when countries are talking about post-pandemic recovery. This is advocated, as I said, by the Culture and Information Division, and they're an important kind of advocacy group to highlight the importance of creative and curative benefits of the creative economy in building back better in the region post-pandemic. This aligns with another key policy coordination framework, which was put together much earlier. This is the ASEAN culture of prevention. This actually links very much back to the health policy discussion that I think happened earlier today, because of course, when we build back a better society, I mean, we're talking, and we're including arts, we're talking about quality of life. So that feeds directly into mental health issues, arts therapy. We may have more time on our hands to think and dwell on certain things. So mental health is certainly a key kind of element that we need to think about when going into the new normal, which is our post-pandemic future. We at ASEAN believe this ultimately leads to better quality of life for all across the region and greater tolerance and intercultural understanding. And as our session clearly states, resilient and inclusive society. So during the pandemic, as I said, we did a lot of online programs. One particular program we did focused on the creative economy, and we brought together colleagues from across ASEAN, and we took the opportunity to kind of exchange historical and contemporary ideas around what comprises ASEAN and its work in artistic fields. So that, as I said, the final session we actually did honed in on the creative economy in ASEAN nations. One of the main takeaways from my perspective is that the regional integration in ASEAN for creative economy has proven very difficult. And as this was raised by Catalin before, because of the evolving nature of the definition of creative economy and the difference between all of the different countries and how they define what is and is not part of the creative economy. However, the Culture and Information Division have done a great job and put together the key concepts that all ASEAN member states can agree upon, which is included in the creative economy. And this came out of a number of initiatives that were driven by ASEAN, the ASEAN Creative Economy Business Forum, and the ASEAN Regional Workshop on Creative Economy. And this is what they've distilled: added value, human creativity. I think this is really important, the third one: sustainable, equitable, and inclusive development. So this is really about developing people, developing skills, careers, and human capital across ASEAN. Intangible assets, and of course, tangible assets. So despite these initiatives, the discussion is, as far as I'm aware, ongoing, and as to what actually defines a creative economy in ASEAN. If you'd like to know more about the challenges and recent work that has gone into the creative economy in our region, please download these particular publications. One is actually produced by the ASEAN Development Bank the Asian Development Bank in partnership with ASEAN, and the other was the final ASEAN magazine from last year, which focused on the creative economy. And you'll find lots of interesting articles, research, and discussions into various aspects of the creative economy. I'm sure my fellow panelists will be able to shed much more light on these discussions, because they are actually in those discussions. I'm merely reflecting what has been shared by my colleagues. So that's the first part of my presentation. So now I'll go on to the second part, and I'd just like to kick it off by first sharing what the ASEAN Secretariat has highlighted as potential areas for ASEAN-Korea cooperation in the creative economy. So as you can see, the digital wave, or the fourth industrial revolution, is very much top of mind for both the Koreans and for ASEAN, especially amongst ASEAN youth. I think that there was some major reports that came up about the digital acceleration, especially amongst young people during the pandemic. There's actually institutions in Korea which showcase ASEAN creative economy products and goods. Also, of course, ASEAN is very much involved in convening meetings to produce recommendations, so that they're very interested in pushing for this in terms of the creative economy and creative industries. And I think this might also feed back into Catalin's presentation about actually capturing or measuring creative industries' contribution and the impact it has to the region. So if anyone has any ideas on this and wants to collaborate with ASEAN, happy to facilitate. I know many of you are either working in the development field or in policies. So yeah, I'm happy to share more during question time if you so wish. Now back to the Connect project. This is the cooperative framework in which we operate. Connect ASEAN was established as part of the 30-year celebration of ASEAN-Korea relations back in 2019. And it was the result of former Korean President Moon's new Southern policy, which focused on establishing closer links to Southeast Asian nations. It is anticipated that the new President Yoon, who was elected in May earlier this year, will alter this policy to suit his own agenda, but it is largely expected to retain the core elements, which includes cooperation. Regardless, Connect ASEAN is driven by the current ASEAN policy cooperation plans, which includes our ASEAN ROK Plan of Action, the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Community Blueprint, and the ASEAN Strategic Plan for Culture and the Arts. Again, if anyone has ideas or wants to start thinking about projects and how to collaborate with us, these are the documents that you'd want to start off looking at, especially, well, in terms of arts and culture, or even the creative economy. Moving on to Connect ASEAN, we are a cultural diplomacy initiative, and our guiding vision is to connect government, the private sector, and civil society across Korea and ASEAN nations to establish cross-cultural relations leading to peace and prosperity in the region. Like, that's very, very lofty, but practically this involves connecting arts institutions, businesses, arts businesses, and individual arts practitioners to devise and implement arts projects. Our program pillars developed in response to the needs of the arts sector, as I said, during the pandemic. And originally it only included exhibitions when our project was signed off, but during the pandemic it expanded to include publications, public programs, residencies, and education programs. This is a slide just showing some of the impacts of the program in ASEAN member states. So since we've begun, during the pandemic, we needed to partner with arts institutions to kind of make sure we had we have KPIs. Of course, it's a development project after all. So we have audience KPIs to meet. So of course, during the pandemic, no one could see anything, no one could go anywhere. So we had to leverage off audiences that had already been established by arts institutions. That meant that we were I think one of the only arts programs at ASEAN that survived the pandemic. So we became very visible during the pandemic because we were the only ones kind of doing anything. So our artist participation rate during the pandemic was actually much higher than we anticipated, and during the, our program became a platform for arts practitioners to connect during the pandemic, which is one of the most important things for me, which we had never planned for to begin with. I mean, everyone was sitting in their rooms or their homes or in their home countries, not being able to go anywhere without any opportunity to work. But Connect ASEAN kind of filled that gap during that period. A very interesting project that we have coming up towards the end of the year, which you may be interested in, is our Climate Futures conference to be held in Siem Reap, and it's the first. It's a people-to-people links project. It's an essential part of any cultural relations program, and this project will be the first major in-person event conceived by us. Our original project proposal included the environment and sustainable development as major concerns amongst youth in ASEAN. And as such, excuse me, this will be the first major project to highlight these themes. Sorry, I'm just going to get some water. I'm feeling a little bit dry. I hope I'm not talking too fast. Okay, excuse me. Thank you. The conference will focus on early career artists and researchers engaged with the topics of the environment and sustainability. And the aim is for us to create an enabling environment to share knowledge, strengthen regional networks, and build capacity amongst arts practitioners who are in this particular field. Korean and Southeast Asian arts has the potential to lead the way in this particular area, and the conference will incorporate other practitioners from other areas of the creative economy, including design and architecture. Next year, we also have a major project coming up in Chiang Mai. We will select 15 Southeast Asian and Korean contemporary print artists who will live and work for a month in Chiang Mai, and it will be facilitated by the local print studios. There are many of them throughout Chiang Mai, and they all operate as small to medium enterprises. The project will allow for a fully comprehensive residency and cultural immersion program with buy-in from all levels of the arts community, institutional partners, and government. It will incorporate the involvement of a traditional paper-making studio, and the artists will respond directly to their environment to create works for 3 ASEAN art collections in Bangkok, Busan, Korea, and Jakarta, Indonesia. I'll just quickly whiz through. I mean, we've done so many projects now over the last couple of years, so I'll just quickly run through these. We managed to actually do a touring art exhibition in the end between Singapore, Manila, and Busan. And also managed to do 3 exhibitions in Jakarta, Yogyakarta, and another one in Busan between 2020 and 2021. Many of these exhibitions actually had to go hybrid, and of course the lockdowns are coming in and off in places like Jakarta and Manila. But we worked with those particular institutions just to keep those projects going, because for a lot of them, they couldn't do anything. All of their project funds were gone. All of the people who are running those institutions were told just to shut down the museum. And so, I mean, that no one was able to work. They had to send people home. But we were we were a bit sneaky and said, well, you don't need to open physically. We can do the hybrid one, and you still have to curate it. You still need to get your exhibition team in to select where it's going onto the wall for when it opens up. So actually, all of those institutions actually worked through the bus to produce. So that was another kind of great achievement for us during that period. And of course, we managed to pay all these artists fees during the pandemic. So artists, they were involved. Many of them were able to either send their artwork via post or using the traditional shipping companies, or some of them sent instructions for how it could be made in the country that was hosting the exhibition. But this is just an overview of the artists that participated in those exhibitions and where they were from. It was kind of easier during that period, of course, to do books, websites, videos. So we did a lot of digital content during that period of time, which also kept people working. And of course, online programs. We were doing one, like, I think every 2 months by the end of it all. So it kept people together. Funnily enough, Now, I never included residencies in the original proposal, but one of the main things to be affected by COVID were artist residencies, because a residency requires the artist to travel to another country, work, and what have you. But what we devised with another foundation was a virtual residency, and this started a whole series of virtual residencies that popped up all over the world. But we were quite early on this, so because we could, I mean, we just, what can we do? There must be something we can do to connect Southeast Asia and Korea. So we've got Korean and Southeast Asian artists to just propose a project. We didn't, I mean, if I could have had my way, I wouldn't have asked them to do anything, but they had to produce something. So all we asked them to do was write some diary entries and record the experience of working together virtually through that period. So in the end, it created a very nice kind of archive on what it was like to be an artist during the pandemic. This then, we actually were then invited to a virtual conference in Bangkok because it's still, the pandemic was still going in 2021, and a lot of people weren't able to travel. But we were again, we kind of shared this experience on how residencies could remain resilient during COVID time. So anyway, that kind of wraps up the projects part. I will just end the presentation with a short video with some testimonials from some artists who have participated in the program.
That experience gave me a foundational understanding of regional art-based programs, cross-border artistic collaboration, and the tools to further my career in the creative industry.
The Connect Asian has given me a platform to get visibility throughout international community during the pandemic time.
Being part of one of ASEAN Connect projects in 2021, it gave me opportunity to present my works with other artists from other countries.
So my experience with Kindness ASEAN has had an impact on communication.
Connect ASEAN certainly opened up a new networking, a new collaborative possibilities for me. In this unprecedented time, with the spirit of together we stand, divided we fall, ASEAN could be the torchbearer, the light, the future.
The institutional support of Connect ASEAN has been very invaluable in my practice as curator, critic, and art historian, particularly in thinking about the importance that diplomatic infrastructures can have in encouraging exciting, far-reaching, and future-oriented projects about the region.
Connect ASEAN has enabled me to forge meaningful and deep friendships with curators in the region, and it has also enabled me to do new research into the region's history that would not have otherwise been possible.
That experience has driven my art from the national to the global level.
In my residency, I have discovered a new technique that gives the work the intrigue that it needs. I have learned so much about how close we are here in the region. I have never doubted my decision to come back here.
Through the Connect ASEAN experience, I was able to explore the possibility of global solidarity. I also broadened the context of my creative work with ASEAN colleagues.
Okay. All right. Okay. Just to conclude, next year, we're going to engage a consultant to lead an external assessment of our program and conduct an arts policy discussion with our stakeholders at ASEAN and Korea. As a result, a report will be produced for the Korean government, making recommendations on how to continue their arts engagement with ASEAN. The report will contain our learnings during and after the program, but if you have any questions about any of the projects or possible future projects, I'd be happy to share more and listen to what you have to say. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Well, Ben, thank you once again. I think you add additional perspective to what Kathleen provided earlier. She was setting a broader global international scene, and then you help us to zoom in into ASEAN context. I like what you presented by showing potential contribution of creative economy, and in this case from the Connect ASEAN project in terms of arts, in terms of providing means of livelihoods, and further develop in terms of industries, particularly engaging youth and things like that. You also pointed out that, in fact, creative economy has been already recognized by the high-level policy makers, even recognized in the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework, meaning to say that creative economy is not only a mainstream economic initiative, but also could help to really facilitate the recovery. That's why it's recognized in this framework. Then you provide some sort of a key concept that's been agreed in ASEAN, which could be used as a common operational concept, you know, that we can also use elsewhere, including GMS, I suppose. Then you share some of the features of ASEAN Republic of Korea initiative under Connect ASEAN, though focusing on arts, but it could be connected with other form of creative economy, upcoming activities. And thank you very much. And also some of the experience in adapting to COVID situation, you know, virtual residency, hybrid exhibition, and so on and so forth. There was also a questions from the online participants of what was the experience in connecting ASEAN and other countries in continue to maintain this kind of creative art or creative economy. In the interest of time, allow me just to invite the last person. Then we'll try to open the discussion and collect ideas. And I would like to emphasize again, ideas that we can take up, be it ASEAN-wide or focusing on GMS as part of ASEAN or as part of Mekong +1. It could be Mekong, Korea, or any other countries, because creative economy is such a broad concept, and it can also help to enter into creative economy from various angles, service or goods. Having said that, now we're going to boil down even at the national level. One of the example is Thailand, and we are fortunate to have Kun Montini Yongwikun earlier already introduced. So she will be sharing the experience on creative district, and of course some of the work of creative economy in Thailand during the COVID-19, and how the Creative Economy Agency has already offered an opportunity to bring creative economy to a new light. So Kun Montini, if you're ready, the floor is over to you, please. Thank you.
สวัสดีค่ะ Can you hear me?
Yes.
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for inviting me as a representative of the economy agencies. So I will start my experience. I focus in my department in Thailand. So can you share me the slide, please?
Do you see Kun Mundoni? Do you see it?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I see it. So even though my topic is focused on Thailand, but let me start with the global trend. So next slide, please. Oh, okay. As the pandemic has shaped the new behavior, so the Monitor International has summarized the global consumer trend 2022. So, but I will pick up from the 10 global consumer. This one is the rural urbanities because it's will link to my topic today. So rural urbanities that I would like to mention is, next slide please. Okay, it's about the relocation. We might say that under the pandemic, the people maybe change the way of living. Of course, they have to work from home, and also according to the survey, there is expect to be working from home in the future as well. But in terms of residence or accommodation, according to the graph and on the right side, in the cities with the population 100,000 to 500,000 and the last city, you may see that the location in the rural area has been the preference among the urban consumer in 2020 first. So both city rural location is increasing, but the urban or inner city location has decreased. But that's what does it mean? It means to the rural area, it would be like the destination of the creative people who looking for the cost saving, the good quality of life, and also the new opportunity of the business. Next slide, please. The new opportunity of the business. It could be because once the global e-commerce sale is, as we know, that is expand more and more, and also the people who live in the rural or countryside or suburb, it could be do much has no limit, because the logistic and digital, it could have the obstacle. So that's why it could be easier for them to take a decision to relocation to the rural or suburb. And back to Thailand. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the homecoming, the people, especially in the creative industry field, we found that in Thailand, as you mentioned, the color dot in the slide, this is 33 provinces that CA has to travel in the last 3 years. And we noticed that the homecoming, or the people who return home, is noticeable in some area, especially in the small city. So, and what will happen to the cities? Next slide, please. So I just came back from Nan last week, and I found that the owner of the season, the craft chef boy, is one of the talents chef affected by the COVID and decided to return home. And he started a minimal style shop house to offer the seasonal ingredients of the Nan province. And then he's not alone. He has a creative neighbor as well, like a cafe, bread shop, and upcoming goat cheese farm. What does it mean? Next slide, please. It means that they will become like creative communities that I mentioned. Normally, there's the homecoming mostly are the senior or retired people, but this time the owner of this shop, some just graduate, some are not more than 30, so they become like the group of people who can chef or can do something for his hometown. Next slide, please. And this one is Nan Fest. Nan Fest is like the umbrella of the event, and comprised of the creative group or creative people, was old and new generation to work together for their hometown. They create the space for the young, for the high school students and also the senior artists to work together and then to create the economic and social impact as well. I mentioned about NAN because this year they has just formulated the group of the creative people and then to start to move the community with the creative activities. But for the other province that have already the creative group, they already create some impact, especially the social impact. So I would like to refer to the study of the British Council. So next slide, please. The British Council has collaborated with CA. Actually, they work and do the research, the social impact of Creative Hub in Thailand. The Creative Hub doesn't mean the space only, but it means the group of community that I mentioned in Nan. They study in 6 hubs in Thailand: Phra, Bangkok, Pattani, Udon Thani, Bangkok, and Songkhla, about the social impact of the Creative Hub in Thailand. So next slide, please. So I would like to share just 2 communities. The first one is Melayu living in Pattani. As you may know that in Pattani is one of the 3 provinces in the deep south of Thailand, and they have like the image of the violence. So that's why these communities, Melayu living, try to create a new activities to gather the people to create the new image of the deep south. And also it's not only the image, but also like the economic and social activity as well. And after they did around 4 or 5 years. And then the conclusion of the impact that we found in the report is that the hub has demonstrated how creative media and the creative economy can be applied to inspire and drive the local, especially the younger generation and creative community to take action to shape the future. So I think this is very important for them to think about the future and to think and action for their future as well. And the second, next slide, please. The second hub in Udon Thani. Udon Thani, Madi Isan is actually is like the same. They are formed in 2016, and then they did many projects, especially for the project that related to the city development, as you may see in the picture about the intersection. So the social impact that it could be concluded with like entry point as a center for social project and enterprise in the northeastern region. And it has acted as a catalyst, inspiring local to take action and play a role in many social projects. So I think this one, both Madi and Pattani is just the example. But how can we empower this creative hub to grow up and bring something to their communities? Next slide, please. Because the benefits of benefit to have these people in the community is, as I mentioned, but the big question for the policymaker and for the CA as well is how the city keep these talents, because after the pandemic, we some creative just think about how to move to another place or maybe move back to Bangkok, but some are still, but how to keep this talent to stay in the communities and maybe invite friends or some network to their communities. So that's why this is the big question for the CA. Next slide, please. So that's why our mission of the CA to drive the economy, to drive creative economy, we have like 3 pillars. First pillar is we try to support creative people, creative business, and the third one is creative district. Because once we have like the creative or talent in the community or in the district, they will utilize the asset and space to create the impact in terms of improve the quality of life, incubate creative people, promote new creative investment, retain existing creative talents, and encourage sustainable tourism, and last one, to preserve the cultural asset. That's why we try to empower this creative hub across the country. As I mentioned, the 33 countries. The next slide, please. And how we have studied the case study in many cities about how to attract the creative or talent to their city, or how to maintain them. And we found a common ground as the 11 creative district driving force. And as you see in the picture, into 5 groups. The policy is about the strategic planning, financial support, the people is stakeholder, and creative cluster. And for the cultural creative support, cultural include public space, place and program for people, and infrastructure like transportation, affordable accommodation, and also like the business develop and support. And this 11 creative district driving force, and then we turn them to be like our 5 strategy to work along in the couple of years ago. Next slide, please. 5 creative district strategy. The first one is strategic planning development. We try to, this one may be the hardest one, because it's related to the data. And we know that the data about the creative economy is quite difficult. And now we just start to collect the data about the creative industry in Thailand. And the CA start to collect the data from the province. That quite difficult, but we try to start to do the framework and connect to the local government to the plan to develop the creative in the area. The second one is the creative placemaking. Is about the infrastructure and to support the creative hub or the talent people to create a new job or to create a new idea to support the community. The third one, to strengthen the creative business. It's not only the creative people who gain the benefit, but also the business who utilize the creativity to create the new value as well. The fourth one is district branding. It's not only to communicate with the outside, but it also the internal communication with the people in the area. Because once they understand the goal, it will move to the 5th strategy, co-create a creative communities. So next slide, please. So this one is our strategy of CA to move the creative economy in the countryside and also in Bangkok. So we start with our 5 creative strategy to create the driving force, and then to support the creative hub or creative group in the area. And by the way, we try to propose to the local government, not only think about only the creative people by themselves, but they have to think about the infrastructure for the family living, like the hospital and school as well. Because according to my experience, we interviewed creative people in many areas, and he said that the things that he want to is very it's quite make the hard decision for them to live in the place, because they think about their kid. He want a kid to can go to the school in the big city, in the bigger city. So that's why once we can think about the local government could provide a better education for their family, it could be one factor that could attract the talent to come. Next slide, please. So once we got the 5 strategies and the framework, and so that's why we start in a couple years to apply our 5 strategy across the country. Now we have 33, sorry in Thai of the name of the province, but to show that these provinces are under the things that we call Thailand Creative District Network, and we have to work together, and CA will support the Creative Hub in each province to work with the local government and be more and more stronger to support their communities. Let me give you the example. Next slide, please.
Kun Montini, if you could wrap up, please. We are running out of time. Thank you.
Okay. This is the sample, Sakon Junction, and the next one. Okay, Creative Nakhon. And that's all. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Kun Montini, and sorry to rush you towards the end. I think Creative Economy Agency of Thailand has provided also another model of how a countries really put creative economy into action with a policy, a strategy, and we have learned among a number of work you are doing through the creative hubs or creative district. I think we can see the ongoing idea, some of the progress made. And while listening, I was thinking whether or not we could make use of the experience of Creative Economy Agency to see how this can be broadened. For example, whether we can really use this concept and perhaps introduce to other Mekong countries and try to expand the network of creative districts or hub so that we can bring in more experience, more creativity, how things are done in different corner of GMS, and that could be one idea. The other idea is that instead of looking at creative district, would it be possible that we can adopt creative economy in the GMS and perhaps looking at GMS as creative sub-region, where there is a cross-fertilized creativity, art, craft, and also business model, how we can really scale up the creativity into economy or industry. It's just only and I think thinking out that I would like to share with you, Kun Monty, perhaps to the audience. I would like just to ask the presenter that I will come back to you for final input in terms of one major recommendation that you would like to recommend to the could be activities that we can build on top of what we have done in your respective organization. Just one recommendation that we can do within 1 or 2 years from now so that we can expand and scale up creative economy or creative industry so that we can already gradually expand the potential, the untapped potential of creative economy. I'll come back to you in a few minutes. For the time being, I would like to open the floor for the audience to raise questions. I saw already a hand. Okay, so please introduce your name and the institutions you are working with, and then ask question and whether or not which speaker, who is the speaker you would like to address the question to, please.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm not sure who I should address to, but I'm happy if any of you three would answer. So I think the word creative economy has been around for quite some time. I think it has been there since, I don't know, more than 10 years, especially in Thailand. And that's why we have established a few organizations, for example, the OKMD, Office of Knowledge Management Development, and then also TCDC, Thailand Creative Design Center, and then auditing. I think at that time it was more like to help the country move forward the middle income trap. And then now I would like to know how has that concept, been evolved with the coming of the COVID-19 outbreak. I understand that the term is still, like ever evolving, right? I would like to know how has that, been shaped by COVID-19. I like example that Kun Montini gave about, the homecoming of the artists, and then how has that, impacted the local community. But then again, it's also touched upon, I think, many other structural limitations of the country as well, that the artists, cannot really survive, right? Being away from home, and then it's better to come back and then start off from scratch. But then again, not many people, not many of them would, become successful in their hometown. I understand that there would be some also that like to that. So this is my takeaway from listening to you, and if you have anything to share on this.
Well, and would you like a few words to respond to that? And Kun Montini and Katalin, if you have any words to add, then please follow. Yeah. So Ben?
I think the first question was this: how's the concept of the creative economy evolved in the Thai context? I mean, actually in the ASEAN, well, I mean, because I've just spoke about the ASEAN context, maybe I'll talk about the Thai context. And there is an article in the ASEAN magazine. It's written by a friend of mine and colleague from Chulalongkorn University, Noom is his name, but he actually he raises 4 points on why it's been so difficult to kind of get the creative economy, well, up and running, as it were, in Thailand. I mean, one is political instability, the way that the department has moved around. One particular thing that he does raise, which I think is key, is there are certain industries like food and tourism, which if you add those to the measurement of creative economy, they become outliers straight away. So I mean, so it's very difficult because the definition keeps on changing, to actually get an agreement on what industries need more support, where you should focus, that kind of thing. So I think, in my opinion, I think every ASEAN can provide a platform for some kind of integration, but each nation needs to decide on its own what industries are important, what needs to be supported, and what creative economy means to them. It's not going to be the same across the board. So
thank you. I think perhaps the difficulties lies in the creativity itself, because that would mean creativity is not something static where we can draw the clear line, and making it an economy also. From the presentation we see interconnection of various creativity, and that broadening the scope, broadening how economy is shaped, and broadening engagement of stakeholder, be youth and business and so on and so forth. I would think what is important is not to come up with a very well-defined concept, but the understanding of what it shaped, characterized, and how it can be further promoted and scaled. And through this process, I think people will start to see what are focus, what are the key elements where we can work on it without trying to draw a very clear boundary. Thank you so much, Ben. Kun Montini and Katalin, if you have any other words to add from what has been said from the questions. Katalin or Kun Montini, which of you would like to?
Sure,
Katalin?
I can. Yeah, very quickly. Yes. So I agree with what Benjamin is saying, that in the end, every country has to decide for themselves, what they consider. I know, for example, that in Indonesia, tourism is a very important component of the creative economy, while maybe for others may want to concentrate more on industries and manufacturing. So, but I also think that there can be common points, especially in the ASEAN region. It's just a question of discussions and agreeing on let's see what are the common points. And actually what I wanted to say, Benjamin, you mentioned at one time that there is a plan for developing a regional database to capture the contribution of the cultural creative industries. So I think UNTAD may be interested and may be helpful in providing support in this, because we are actually working with Angola also to do creative economy mapping. And I think really the main point is, to come up with a consensus that kind of can work for everyone. And then, of course, every country can have their own definitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Kun Montini Club, perhaps before we already start asking you the final question, Kun Montini, you would like to add any aspects or thought towards the question asked?
Yeah, because the creativity is quite difficult to understand, so that's why we try to show them how to bring the creativity to the local communities and connect to the local government. So that's why I mentioned my job as in my presentation. So if we can support them to work together more and more and more, and then I think finally the policymaker, especially in the local area, it could be understand how to utilize the creativities to drive their social and economics. So that's why this is my opinion.
Thank you. Now, my final question, apology, the audience from on-site and online, we really have to wrap it up before the final plenary. What could be the recommendation from each of the panelists or presenter that you think Greater Mekong sub-region or as part of broader ASEAN, perhaps we can take up or we can initiate so that we can build on top of the progress, expand scale of progress in creative economy that we have seen over the past recent year, so that we can create a new height where we understand better, really tap on the untapped potential and really contribute to the more livelihoods, employment opportunity, and general economic development in the region. What could be the recommendation you have in your mind? Can I start first from Ben?
Sorry. Well, perhaps, if I could think of a project that could integrate all of us, maybe that would be the best thing. But I mean, I noticed from Kathleen's presentation, design is very strong, especially in this in our region here. I'm sure Kun Montini will agree with me. I've spent a lot of time in Chiang Mai. I mean, the way that creativity kind of is dispersed across the whole community, that whole city, if you were able to kind of somehow create a program that takes that kind of experience from Mekong countries and then cross well, in Thailand, perhaps you could use that as a base, and then somehow create some kind of capability development program across the Mekong countries, and at the same time measure it and for how it's impacting those communities. I think that might satisfy all three of us. And that is something that could probably be facilitated by the Mekong Institute. Anyway, that's just an idea.
Thank you, Ben. So we already have our first idea. Can I ask Kathleen, what would be the recommendation you have in mind?
I can only echo what my fellow panelist has just mentioned. For me, this is kind of like the starting point. If you really wanna develop concrete policies, you have to know what are the industries industries that are really driving the creative economy, what are the industries that have the most employment. If you want to be inclusive, you know, you have to know where are the women, where are the marginalized groups, where are the young people. So for this, the first step for me is really measurement. And in our experience at UNCTAD, it's always very good a starting point to work with the data that you have, to work with the National Statistical Office or regional statistical offices, and, you know, to really take stock of your industries and already existing data. And if there is an interest for this, we would be very happy to provide or expertise and support for this. Thank you very much. And I also would like to thank you for the fellow panelists. I really learned a lot. These are very inspiring examples that you have discussed. And I think this is a really very dynamic sector in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathleen. You are most welcome and invited to really use Greater Mekong sub-region as one of the so-called, you know, pilot region, you know, so that we can really build on the national treasure, so to say, and start to expand to how regional approach to creative economy could be promoted. Last but not the least, Kun Montini, please, any recommendation or the recommendation from you?
Yes, actually, from Benjamin and Kathleen is very important. Their project is very important because if you could connect the communities, artist community or creative communities in the local area to ASEAN, you can exchange the experience and inspire to each other. But I would love to recommend more that you could create a project that called the local government residency. If you can invite local government to work with like the artists or the creative people to create the project that let them understand of each other. I think it would be great to let them innovate the new policy to support the creative group in ASEAN. And then Kathleen will be like another important part to measure or evaluate what will happen after they work together. I think this is my recommendation.
Thank you. We have already sort of initial thought and idea, and I take it that the presenter could also represent your agency to become our initial set of partner of this initiative. You know, we have international level, ASEAN level, and one of the Mekong lead like creative economy agency. As we have already basic element, is only to find someone to support us to put our thought into implementation and activity. With that, I would like to thank all the presenter and would like the audience to give a round of applause them, please. All right. I don't have time to summarize now, but I will do in the main plenary. I hope you continue to stay with us so that we see not only in terms of what creative economy could contribute to COVID recovery, but cross linkages with other topics, digital economy, with other area where collectively we can contribute to COVID recovery and build long-term resilience. Thank you for your interest, participation. See you in 5-10 minutes in the plenary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Ka.
Thank you, Kathleen. Bye bye. Thank you very much. Yeah. Dr. Muntani Kapongka. So everyone, see you in latest knowledge today. Let's run. I hope you are not that to get tired.
Right. Good. Let me. Sure. Yes. Why ช่วยคุณเบนถ่ายรูปหน่อย